All right, welcome back, everybody. Today's special guest on our Zoomcast is Barry Downs from Bicton Travel, not Bitcoin Travel, as I keep going to say, but Bicton Travel is the sales and marketing manager over there in sunny WA. And he's obviously jumped on today to share what's been happening in their world over there over the last few months and give us a little bit of an update from their side of things and a couple of other exciting side projects and things that Barry's been working on as well, which is really exciting to hear from as well. So Barry, I'm sure there's a couple of people out there that might know of you or who you are, but those that may not, how about you start us off with your backstory and how you sort of got into the industry and how you kind of ended up where you are at the moment.
Well, I kind of fell into the industry by accident. I actually trained as a hotel manager back in the UK. And having graduated and was working in this beautiful conference center in like a stately home type environment, I just woke up one day and thought, nah, I don't think I want to do this. But I had no idea what I wanted to do, but I could cook. So that was a bit of a savior. So I saw a job advertised in the French Alps as a chalet host. I didn't speak French. I couldn't ski, but I thought apply for it anyway. And I did. I got the job and ran my own chalet in Le Plan in the French Alps for a season. And got to the end of the winter ski season and was like, oh, well, what do I do now? Like, this company that I'm working for doesn't exist in summer. It's purely a winter company. But they had sister companies that operated holidays to beach destinations all over Europe. So I did put an application in to be a holiday rep, which is a position that doesn't exist here in Australia. But the nearest position you can kind of compare it to is a tour director for a coach company. But with a lot more guests. So I applied and got sent out to an island called Tenerife, which is in the Canary Islands, in one of the worst hotels you'd ever seen, with I think 1,000 guests per week, and they literally arrive and line up to abuse me and complain and try to check out again. So it was a baptism of fire, but it was insane. I've completely fell in love with it. As much as you worked incredibly hard, you partied hard as well, and we did 8-month seasons. And I pretty much went from beach to ski for almost 7 years, really, working in Italy, Spain, the Spanish islands, Andorra, the French Alps, Turkey. So got to experience lots of different destinations and got to work with all-inclusive properties, self-catering properties. We got to help people get married. We got to visit them when they were arrested. We had terrorists, car bomb explosions outside of hotels, so had everything under the sun thrown at me, and as a result I'm a pretty chilled out person now. Nothing really kind of phases me. From there I met my wife in Barcelona. She was English, and she was coming back to Australia, and I decided to tag along, came along as a backpacker. That was 15-16 years ago, and I've never left. But that kind of travel environment that I was working in Europe obviously doesn't exist over here. So having done a few manual jobs whilst I was a backpacker, I eventually found a position with a small senior travel group that did day tours around Western Australia, and were just starting to venture into overseas escorted holidays, and joined them and took their first group over to Vietnam and Cambodia, which was incredible. And very quickly, one of our representatives, who was working for the representative for Holland America Line at the time, asked me to apply for her job because she was retiring. And even though I knew nothing about cruise, and actually at the time had no interest in stepping on board a cruise ship, applied for the job with what was Travel the World. They were the representatives of Holland America, Carnival, Tau, Windstar, etc. Got the job. I was 4 years BDM for Western Australia, and then 4 years as national sales manager. But doing it from the West, and people to this day still think that I've moved over to Perth, but I was always in Perth, was just spending more time on the East Coast. I got to about 4 years as national sales manager, and as I said, traveling an awful lot. And anybody that's been in that place where you're sat in a hotel room by yourself and your wife and your 2 young kids are back home, you just wake up one day and think, what am I doing? Like, baby 3 was on the way, and I was like, nah, I've got to call it a day. I've got to spend more time at home and be a good dad. So there wasn't really many opportunities here. So I went to Bicton Travel. It at the time was one of my key accounts, and said, can you create a job? Like, have you got anything going? And they didn't have anything, but to be fair, they did create a job. But it was at a time when everything was booming, cruising was going incredibly well. And so they created a position as sales and promotions manager, which was incredible. Doing a lot of events, implementing the first travel expo for them, And then the marketing manager retired, and I acquired the marketing side of things. And then more recently, I've kind of evolved into a bit of a brand ambassador, doing a radio show for them, and being a bit of a spokesperson to the wider media, for want of a better word. And yeah, been here for 8 years next week, actually. So incredible. For people that don't know Bicton, they're incredible family-run business. They started 21 years ago. Mother and son, Carol and Phil, opened an agency that's they come from the UK and could see that cruise was a reasonably big thing in the UK and didn't really exist here, particularly in Western Australia. So they opened an agency with a view that one day it would become a cruise specialist, but very quickly they got a reputation. And in part thanks to SARS, because Star Cruises brought down the ships from Asia, home ported here in Fremantle, and overnight we had this massive influx of people wanting to go on a cruise for the first time. And 21 years later, we're a team of 28, 29 prior to this situation we call COVID. And our world's been turned upside down, as is everybody that you speak to almost daily.
Yeah. And I guess on that, how has the last sort of 3 or 4 months been for you guys and I guess as in general, the business?
Yeah, so I remember it vividly, 21st of March, because it was my birthday. Stood down to initially 1 day a week just to try and keep some media activity at the time, the whole which was going on. And I had some small contacts that I could use to try and get some positive news out here and there. But then when JobKeeper was announced, obviously we tried to put everybody onto the equivalent of whatever your JobKeeper salary was. So I've been doing 2 days a week now for Bicton, working from home, which I used to do anyway, so I find it quite natural to work from home. I think a lot of people had a bit of a shock adjustment to that, but for me, I quite like it. I don't have to do the big commutes. I actually get a lot more done. But back in the office, there was a small team that were pulled back in to process the refunds, the cancellations, the future cruise credits, etc. But with a closed door, we were doing everything via phone and email. I think pretty much everybody was. And we've got a few extra team members that are stood down receiving JobKeeper, but there quite simply isn't enough work for them to be in the office. We're hoping that will change in the foreseeable future, and we can bring them back, and we're starting to see those green shoots, which is nice. There is a bit of a light at the end of that tunnel.
And you said that obviously early on, a day a week or whatever, just to try to keep in front of the media sort of, I guess, storm that we kind of seen happen all around that. What we don't get to hear enough of in the, I guess in the mainstream or out loud enough is some of those good news stories or, great wins that agents have managed to pull off and some of the miraculous things that they've done. What, have you got any of those sort of stories that you would have loved to have been able to shout at the screen whilst watching some crazy news story that was negative, and you wanted to say, hey, what about this, this time, or how about when we did this, and, what would you like the world to know that you guys achieved at that time?
Well, I think the important thing to remember is that we've got a really good loyal database. About 70% of our clients have traveled with us many, many times, and they're actually becoming more of an ambassador rather than a client. They will actively get on Facebook and defend us if somebody's having a rant, and those people have been very understanding. They get that this is a very, very different situation that has never been experienced, and whilst they would love their future cruise credit tomorrow, or they would like their refund to happen next week, it just can't happen. Like, the whole world's cancelled their holidays, for want of a better word. So the time that's going to take, and I'd say 70% of people are frustrated, but they understand and they're okay with that. There's just that 25, 30% who are vicious, evil, abusive, that really wind down the team, which is a shame, because you remember those bad times. You don't remember all those good people that are, got your back and they've got your corner, and they're willing to fight for you and send you a bottle of wine or a bunch of flowers to keep the smiles going in the office. But I know some of your guests have talked about, getting massive groups of people from all over the world back. We, as this happened, we actually didn't have that many people overseas, so we were quite lucky in that we didn't have huge numbers of people to repatriate back. So our focus has been mainly on helping our clients understand what is happening right now, and realistically how long it's going to take to get a refund. And as you know, that advice changes daily, and the terms and conditions change all the time. So it's a bit of a battle, but we just have to try and stay as positive as we possibly can, and be thankful for JobKeeper, I guess.
What do you think the key reasons are for the Bicton travel community to be as loyal and supportive and wanting to get in front of those negative Facebook comments or whatever? You know, where do you think that comes from? How do you guys create a business that looks like that?
I think we've always just very, very simply done the right thing by the clients. Even if at times it's meant us being out of pocket because the supplier or the principal hasn't necessarily done what we wanted them to do, but we believe that we needed to do something to make it right and keep these clients for future. Because if you do the right thing and it costs you, a couple of $100 today, and they come back and they book holidays with you for the next 10 years, it's been worthwhile. And I think that was the mentality of Carol and Phil from the very, very early days, to do the right thing, and that's very much instilled in all of the travel advisors, that you are a face of Bicton. You've got to try and do whatever you can and be the ambassador for the client and get the right outcome wherever you can. And thankfully that's served us well, and we have got this core of very, very loyal clients.
Yeah, and I think that's a key part to any business or any successful agent out there is, just as simple as just doing the right thing for them, and over time that will create the trust and the ambassadors, and you won't need to defend yourself. People will defend on your behalf, which is great to see. Now, you mentioned obviously there was a few things that were quite frustrating through that period, whether it was policy changes or the odd disgruntled customer. What have you felt has been the most frustrating part for you and for Bicton Travel through this period?
I think the biggest is the delay in getting either that future travel credit or getting the refund if it's available. And it's okay for people to say, normally it takes about 8 weeks, but it's probably going to take us 12 to 16 weeks. But some suppliers, if a client doesn't believe us and the client is phoning up that supplier and saying, "Where's my refund?" They're just saying, "Your agent's got it," and we haven't. So then having to have that conversation again and try to prove that we're not lying. We don't physically have their money. It's just an ongoing battle that you don't necessarily need, but it's just one of those things that we're having to deal with.
Yeah, and we hear that a bit. I guess the communication, channels, are probably what's been most challenging for people. Whether that's constant updates and changes, or the different conversations that customers are having with agents or with direct suppliers. And a consistent approach to that across the board. If we learn anything, could be one thing that we all aim to achieve on the other side. Of all of this, because any confusion creates frustration and creates anger. So the least amount of confusion that we can contribute to, from all avenues is only going to serve us all better. Hey,
I think the cruise lines in general have been the better of all the operators, in that they've been quite transparent early on, and they come out with the offer of you can have 125 future credit or you can have 100% refund, whereas maybe the airlines and other parts of the industry haven't been as transparent, and they can probably learn a little bit from that.
Yeah, and I think that's a reflection of the cruise industry pre-COVID. It was probably a simpler one for agents to deal with. It's a deposit on this date, it's a final payment on this date, it's cancel so many days out, you get this. It's all pretty straightforward, whereas I think some of the other areas of the industry, especially the airline industry, is a little bit more complicated. There's a little bit more red tape for whatever reason, whether it's just we've always done it that way compared to the actual right way of doing it. But you're right. And I don't think there's any real surprise there that the cruise industry has been able to do that. And I guess speaking of the cruise industry, I know that you're running a podcast around the cruise industry. It's something, great timing to get something like that off the ground as anyone who's trying to start anything up at the moment, as I can definitely attest to. How's that been going? What was the purpose behind it? Where did it all come from? And where do you see it looking like going in the future?
Well, probably about more than 12 months ago, I had this idea. I'm a bit of a podcast freak. I get sick of listening to commercial radio on the commute, and I want to learn something, so I listen to podcasts on the drive to work all the time. And I just had this idea that there was, people that go on a cruise love cruising, and they are diehard cruisers. And even before COVID happened, I thought there's an opportunity for more people to talk about their experience, because people that don't go on a cruise really don't understand it and they don't really have that much of an interest. But if they heard somebody talk about it passionately that wasn't necessarily a travel agent, then that might convert a few more people. So yeah, probably more than 12 months ago, I had this idea. And probably about late last October, I was about to launch it, and then life just got busy. You know, back then we were going to conferences, we were going on cruises, and going on educationals. So life did get busy, and then in March, obviously the world changed, and I thought, no, let's do it. I'd put 2 episodes out, I'd paused it, but let's bring it back to life. So I had this opportunity with the reduction in hours to dedicate 1 day a week to this little beast that's become the Big Cruise Podcast. We've got a set format. Every week I speak to a maritime historian, and he takes us back to a time of maritime history, talks about an iconic ship. Then we move into cruise news, and we try to keep that as positive as possible, which some weeks is easy because there's new ships that have been floated out, or other weeks there simply isn't that much positive news out there. And then a couple of weeks ago, Clear actually, and they approached and said, could we be a part of it? It's like, yeah, of course, the more the merrier. So Peter Collar, who's the training ambassador there, he comes on weekly. Initially, he came to talk about, what is a Clear accredited travel advisor and how do you find one? And then we've been inviting him back because he had about a decade at sea. He's been to pretty much all over the world. And he talks about what you can do in a different port every week. And then we finally finish up with a cruise review from a real cruiser. And initially, admittedly, it was people that I knew that were doing the reviews. But refreshingly, there's been a lot of people that have contacted me via the website, that have been referred to me from other people to say, this person went on a cruise, loved it, they really want to speak to you, they're happy to do a review. And we've had reviews from anything from a boutique Tauk River cruise through to a Cunard transatlantic to a Carnival cruise, Norwegian, so pretty much everything. And everybody that comes on has just got a really positive story. And that's not curated or crafted by me, that's them generally wanting to share what happened on their cruise experience. So whilst we can't travel, it's nice to put, inspiring stories out there that we can hopefully travel in the future. And this is what it
that's cruise travelers, aren't they? They're just so passionate about it, and they love to tell the world, and they want to convince everybody to jump on a ship. And we've all met those people, and we've all had those as customers, or even just talk to them on a cruise ship. So that's really cool. And have you got any cool stories, or any particular people that have jumped on the podcast and shared their, someone that's done 250,000 nights at sea or something, interesting?
No, I have got somebody in the wings though that's done a triple back-to-back seaborne cruise in the Med. So I think it ended up to be about 38 days. So I'm speaking to him in the next couple of weeks. So I'm really keen to. He's a die-hard seaborne cruiser. He loves seaborne. He loves small ships. He loves luxury. Yeah. But 38 days on a small ship around the Med must have been pretty impressive.
Must have cost a couple of bucks. I'm sure the agent who got that booking would have been happy with that. And you said you were doing a little bit of stuff with radio. What's that like for you at the moment?
So that evolved from pre-COVID. Bicton Travel approached the local talkback radio station, 6PR, and we wanted to try and get a bit of a travel segment going where we would go in every week and share stories on the destination, share positive news, and allow the general public to call in with questions. And we'll get anything to 10 to 12 questions a week. I think there were other people doing similar things around the country, but we were one of the only one that was taking live questions from the audience. So some weeks you had no idea what was going to be thrown at you, but it was good. It kept you on your toes. And so we've been doing that for about 3.5 years now, and have a really, really good relationship with the key hosts, Simon Beaumont, and the production team behind the scenes. So much so, no travel agent is in a position to spend any money right now. So we're not in a position to sponsor that segment anymore. But they've been great. They welcome me back every single week to be a bit of a voice for the industry, and share what is going on. We don't take calls at the minute because, that's just a minefield of difficulties. But we do get to share what's happening, and share, when pauses are extended, when there's some when the Eiffel Tower opened last week for the first time in months. So we share little things like that are happening around the world. And I guess an extension for that, about 7 weeks ago, I was getting pretty frustrated with what was going on with the witch hunt, particularly a current affair, and how they were just aggressively going after the cruise industry, and used my 6PR contacts and other people that I know, and there's not that many of them, but put out a statement about, cruising isn't this big bad evil beast. People will cruise again. These are the kind of places that they will probably go to. And yes, cruising will change, but let's just see what that kind of looks like. And my phone literally lit up overnight. I had Channel 7 News on the phone. I had Sunrise wanting to do an interview, radio stations around the country, newspapers on the East Coast. And they all wanted a positive news story. Whilst this one media outlet was going for negativity to the extreme, everybody else wanted a positive story. And had a lot of success for a good couple of weeks just trying to share some, cruising isn't this evil monster. And people will get back on the ship again when the time is right. And so, yeah, it's been interesting.
And I guess just on that and everything else that you've kind of been talking about, you've got a wealth of experience from different areas of the industry. You've had your finger on the pulse in I guess lots of different conversations, whether it's the podcast or the media or the radio and just in general the industry. Just from a big picture, I guess, concept or a bit of an overview, everything that you've been through over the last sort of 3 or 4 months and all of that, what are some of the things that you think key areas of the industry that we can really improve on or change a little bit or start to work towards a better way of doing things? What's your take on some of that?
I think you kind of touched on it earlier with the unnecessary red tape that's historically there for whatever reason. I think as an industry, we need to come forward and work a way to just simplify everything. There's no need for unnecessarily complications. We can pay a supplier very, very easily, but to get a refund back seems to be incredibly complicated. Why is it not as easy as giving the money to receive it? And I know it's a manual process and there's things that need to happen, but yeah, we need to work together to make sure that if anything like this happens ever again in the future, that we're better positioned to make sure that we can handle things a little better, I think.
Yeah, and look, there's lots of ideas around, where that sits, how that sits, what's the best thing moving forward. But I think simplifying it is key. I think we all want a simpler industry. I don't think anybody outside the industry would ever
understand what happens.
No one would ever believe us. No one would believe us when we explain stuff. It's hard enough to convince a customer that there's 17 different prices that they could pay for the same seat on an aircraft, let alone the ins and outs of the cancellations, refunds, reissues, changes, when you can buy stuff, when you can't buy stuff. Imagine trying to explain an ADM to an everyday customer. Like even most experienced agents can't understand that stuff. So So you're right. Anything that we can do to simplify that. How can we do that? I have chats with lots of people, and this is probably a very common theme that people do come up with. What do you think as an industry or collectively? How do we get to a point where we can actually start working on this? Because there's lots of great ideas out there, but what are we going to do collectively to get there?
Well, I guess I'll probably refer it back to cruise again, because that's my knowledge, my centre of my knowledge. Numbers of agents around the country are on like advisory boards for the different cruise lines and feedback on how to make things simpler, how to make things easier, and to what people are asking for. So there is that more cohesive environment, and we don't see that kind of thing with necessarily the tour operators or the airlines as such. So I think we can learn a little bit again from the cruise lines and have this two-way conversation a little bit more, rather than being not dictated to, but being told that this is the way that things have to happen. Yeah. Because, I think if we all put our heads together, we can find a lot simpler ways of doing things and doing things for the right reason.
Yeah, I think a bit of cohesiveness or togetherness from the supplier and the agent side of things, whether that's tour, cruise, airline, whatever. I think there's, from what I hear, and I guess I hear the conversation just off screen as well before and after we hit record. And there is still a little bit of angst from both sides. One side saying it's your fault and the other side saying it's your fault, or you're not treating us the way you could be, and you're not treating us the way you could be. So I really want that to be, some form of togetherness and some collaborative. I don't want all the tour companies to get together and come up with the new idea. I want the tour companies and a bunch of agents and agency owners and people to come together and come up with an idea. That's what we really need, I think, as much as possible. And I don't know, there's some great people out there doing some good work and trying to come up with some new new ways of doing things on the other side. And look, I think, the more that we can all just continue to keep talking about it and working towards that, then there's a fair chance that we'll get there.
I think we have to give credit to the suppliers have also protected agents' commissions, because not everybody has done that. Agents have put a lot of good work in, and there are some suppliers who've been incredibly supportive and have made sure that they've protected those commissions. And I think those suppliers will be the ones that will maintain their relationships to the other side of this, and we'll have a two-way mutual respect and support moving forward.
Yeah, and I think that's the key, isn't it? It's that mutual respect. It's the supplier respecting how much the agent can really bring value to their business and to their customers and to the product, and the same thing, the agents really respecting the suppliers and what they're actually doing behind the scenes to be able to create that product and put that product in front of those customers that can enjoy whatever it is that their holiday is going to be. I guess you're in travel, we're in travel, we're all trying to hope these borders open up and get moving and we can all go somewhere. Have you got anything planned yourself? Have you taken the punt and locked something in for a few months down the track? What's
I haven't locked it in yet. We've been discussing as a family actually what we want to do. And the kids have decided they want to go on a boat holiday next year, which is a self-drive boats in the south of France and all over Europe. But we did one a couple of years ago in Venice, and it's still the most talked about holiday we ever went on. And they've said that, we want to go back to Europe, we want to do that. So I haven't booked it in, but I've earmarked the boat that I want and the route that we want to do. Just waiting for that green light for international travel to be allowed. But in the meantime, when that first cruise ship comes into Australia, I'll be one of the first people walking up that gangway. I can't wait to get back out.
Absolutely, and we all can't wait to get moving and getting on something, whether that floats or flies or putts along in a la boat concept. I think we can't wait to get moving. So I hope that you do get over there and get to experience that. It sounds like your last one with the family was pretty cool. So good luck with that. And before we let you go, and obviously a huge amount of value, I think you've given us a lot to think about and contributed, a lot to the group so far. But if there is anyone else that you could think that maybe want to jump on and share their story and contribute some stuff to the group, who would that be?
Sure. So the first person I thought deserved a bit of a voice was Virgin Voyages. I don't know if you know, they received their first ship, but never got to sail with any guests. So the Scarlet Lady is currently in the Bahamas, waiting to receive her first guests and do her first sailing. And Valiant Lady, the second ship, is actually being fitted out, ready to start her first season. So hopefully things will be back to normal in time for her. But Sharon Hando is the national sales manager for Virgin, and I thought it'd be great for her to share what it's been like to have the highs of receiving a new ship and then oh my God, we can't physically do anything with it. And Shaz loves a chat, so you'll have a good time speaking to her. And somebody else, I thought maybe Justin Seeley from Ramsgate Travel in New South Wales, a beautiful person with a nice little traditional agency with, again, a very loyal client base, and she might have a good story to share as well. So hopefully you get to speak to at least one of them.
Yeah, great. Well, we'll tag them in and hopefully they can find some time to share their story. And on a side note, I was lucky enough to be sprayed with a bottle of champagne by Mr. Branson when he was in Australia during his launch. I was up there on the top of the building in South Bank when he came along and had a bit of a chat to us, and I just happened to be standing in the front row for no reason. I wasn't trying to be. We didn't even know where the stage was. I was just having a chat to an agent. We turned around and realised we were at the front.
I couldn't believe I turned down that gig. I only got back into Australia a few days before, and then I heard Sir Richard was there. I was like, oh God, the one thing that I turned down, and it was the one thing I should have been at.
Yeah, it was pretty cool. And look, I mean, that product in itself, I've been excited about that product ever since I heard about it. It's going to be such a game changer for that part of the industry, and hopefully, they can get moving quickly and sailing quickly and get some customers on board, because I can't wait to hear some feedback on what it actually looks like. If it lives up to what they've been promoting, I reckon it's going to be pretty cool. So looking forward to hearing from Sharon and what's going on in their space. So, mate, again, thank you.
You're very welcome.
It's been great to have you on and hear what's happening over there in the West. And we wish you and the rest of the Bicton team all the best over the coming months, and hope to see you guys come out of here stronger and better for it. and get those loyal customers moving and traveling again.
Absolutely. Yeah, they're all waiting in the wings. They desperately want to travel. They just want that green light like we all do.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, mate. Well, good luck with everything. We'll jump on and listen to that podcast as it comes out over the coming weeks.
Thank you.
And good luck with it all. We'll talk soon.
Cheers.
Cheers. See ya.